Hello and welcome into Purple Tie Guy Sports. I am the guy in the purple tie. My name is Brandon Pavlina. Thank you for tuning in wherever and however you are doing so. A busy week in sports, the Home Run Derby taking place, the MLB All-Star Game taking place, and of course the ESPYs just last night. So without further ado, let's dive right in with our first event of the week, the Home Run Derby. Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees, the winner of the Home Run Derby, made the Yankees the first team in MLB history to have 4 different Home Run Derby champions. Judge also became the first rookie to win the Home Run Derby outright. Wally Joyner, who was a rookie, tied Darryl Strawberry in the 1986 Home Run Derby, but Judge, the first rookie to win the Derby outright. And this also wasn't Aaron's first victory in a Home Run Derby, as in 2012, while at Fresno State, he took home the crown in the College Home Run Derby. So it wasn't his first victory in a Home Run Derby, and it certainly won't be his last, as the field is competitive. But, I mean, his immense power is and the ease of which he's able to hit home runs out of the ballpark. It just seems like there's not going to be anybody really that is going to be able to beat him, or at the very least, Judge will be in the running every single year to have a chance to win it. So I think the larger question is going to be whether or not Judge will ultimately be able to topple Ken Griffey Jr.'s record of 3 wins in the Home Run Derby, as with one already under his belt, and Judge obviously being likely to be a part of the competition for the foreseeable future, there's no reason to think that he won't have a very good chance of tying or breaking Griffey's record of 3 victories in the Home Run Derby. And it'll also be really interesting to see next year whether or not Judge will be able to add his name to the list of players who have won back-to-back Home Run Derbies, as it's only been done by 2 other players, Ken Griffey Jr. and Yoenis Cespedes. Up next is the MLB All-Star Game. Not a very exciting game, truthfully, as it was a pitching duel throughout. 2-1, the final score in favor of the American League. Robinson Cano with the home run off of Wade Davis to propel the American League to victory. So really not a whole lot of need to go back and analyze the game, but rather I want to take a look at what I believe to be the best moments of the game and the worst moment of the game. And the reason I say best moments is because I have a tie for the best moment. The first one being Nelson Cruz going out and taking a picture with umpire Joe West. Just a very funny, a very cool gesture by Cruz, trying to have some fun. Just a unique thing to go out and do. Cruz having said that he was just a big fan of Joe West, wanted to go and take a picture with him. Joe West's reaction was funny. Just all in all, a very cool moment, a cool gesture by Cruz for a guy in Joe West who's been a part of Major League Baseball umpiring for a very, very long time. And then the other cool moment for me was Bryce Harper's interview with Joe Buck, in which he asked Buck about Dak Prescott. I thought that was funny, very cool, just kind of a crossing over of sports. But I also just really liked the outfielder interviews that they did, whether it was Harper's or George Springer's. I wish that they had done a little bit more of that, of trying some outside of the box presentations of the game, talking to the players in the middle of the game. And obviously, balls weren't hit to them, so it had no impact. You didn't really get to see what the ramifications maybe could have been. And obviously, it's not something that you could have done in a regular season game. It's just not feasible. But in a game that really doesn't matter, I just think it would have been, fun or cool to do a little bit more of that. And again, I really enjoyed that part of the broadcast when they were talking to the players in the middle of the game. Now, for me, the worst moment of the game was the Alex Rodriguez walking around the infield and interviewing players while having to use cue cards to do so, and seemingly having to use the cue cards to remember Zach Cozart, the shortstop for the Cincinnati Reds, having to remember his name. And not only that, but also the fact that Rodriguez only had to ask maybe 3 or 4 questions just seemed ridiculous to me, for him to have to take cue cards out there when, again, it's his job. And you're not memorizing a whole lot to go out there and ask them. So just a very peculiar moment of the game, and not very well done by Rodriguez. And to take it even one step further, it's just mind-boggling to me that Rodriguez is being given this platform to be an advocate for the game of baseball and be a broadcaster the way he is, when he's quite literally the biggest cheater in the history of the game. I mean, he disgraced and disrespected the game with what he did, being caught using steroids several times. And so it's something that I just don't truly understand, is he was being scorned on his way out of New York, and now he's being revered as this broadcaster and being put front and center. And I just feel like if you're going to make a list of people who you shouldn't be putting front and center to represent the game of baseball, Alex Rodriguez would be right at the top of the list of people you don't want there, given the way that he handled himself throughout the course of his career. Want to take a look now at the quote of the week. Steve Kerr came out this week and called Kevin Durant's 2-year, $53 million deal a remarkable gesture. I told him it reminded me a little bit of Tim Duncan and his time with the Spurs, Kerr said. He made max money, and then at key times in his career, he took a little less so they could add a player here and there. I mean, give me a break, okay? Don't put Durant and Duncan in the same breath. And not only that, don't coddle Durant by trying to compare him to Tim Duncan. And the only player that should be hailed for what they did regarding contracts for their team is Dirk Nowitzki, who it was recently discussed sacrificed nearly $200 million by choosing not to sign max deals on 2 separate occasions. Most recently, in 2014, when he signed a 3-year, $25 million contract. And that contract only ran for 2 of those years, and it only paid him $16 million over those 2 seasons. So Nowitzki sacrificed $15 to $20 million for over 2 different seasons. So that's almost $30 to $40 million that Dirk Nowitzki sacrificed. Okay, that is a remarkable gesture. What Kevin Durant did is not a remarkable gesture. Last but certainly not least, the ESPYs. The ESPYs are always a really fun celebration of some of the best athletes in the world and just the sporting world as a whole. And last night was great. It was a good show, especially for a Cubs fan like myself, getting to see the Cubs celebrated the way that they were. Although I will say that the Bill Murray stuff was a little weird. It was odd, kind of, with the champagne on the stage and all that. But regardless, still very exciting to see the Cubs celebrated the way that they were. I also wasn't really crazy about Peyton Manning as a host. I did have pretty high expectations for him. I thought he would do a really good job with it, and it just wasn't as funny, or the opening monologue I thought wasn't as good as maybe it could have been. And maybe that's being a little bit of a stickler, but regardless, I didn't think the skits were all that funny. They seemed a little bit forced, whether it was the Super Bowl party one or the retirement home one. You've seen Peyton Manning in some Saturday Night Live skits and commercials, and it seems very natural. Those just seemed a little bit forced and just kind of uncomfortable. So I wasn't really crazy about them. And to go back and touch on the opening monologue too, I thought the best joke of the monologue was about Kevin Durant wanting to join the gymnastics team because of how dominant they were. And come to find out that Durant was apparently in on the joke, which to me is just a very weird thing to have happen. It just kind of ruins it, for a lot of reasons. Most significantly, the fact that if he's in on it, then it makes me question the reality of the rest of the jokes. Are all the athletes who are having jokes made about them in on the jokes? Do they know what's going to be said ahead of time? And if that's the case, then that takes a lot away from it. And so just very weird to come to find out that Durant was in on the joke. It says something to me about him as well, if he was the only one that they've done that with. The fact that maybe he's a little too sensitive. The fact that they wanted to check with him and make sure that he was going to be okay with it. Just very odd to have that happen and have that come out the way that it did. Because I thought it was a great and funny joke, and disappointing to know that it wasn't as real as it maybe had seemed at the time. And furthermore, the award that I think that they got wrong last night was Durant having won the best championship performance over Tom Brady and Deshaun Watson. There have been players who have put up the kind of numbers that Kevin Durant did in the NBA Finals before, but nobody has ever led a larger comeback in the Super Bowl, and nobody puts up the kind of numbers that Deshaun Watson did on Alabama's defense. I mean, when you compare the impressiveness of what Kevin Durant did to the greatest Super Bowl comeback ever, and an unbelievable performance against a vaunting Alabama defense, it just doesn't really hold a whole lot of ground for me for Durant to have won that award. And I know the fans voted on it, and that's seemingly the only reason why he would have gotten that award. Because I think if maybe some athletes maybe got a chance to vote on it, I just don't think that Durant was really the one who was worthy of winning best championship performance when you have Tom Brady and Deshaun Watson having some pretty singular performances that virtually nobody else has ever done to compete with. That's going to do it for episode 1 of Purple Tie Guy Sports. I'm Brandon Pavlina. This is going to continue to be in flux just as far as how I want this to go until I kind of do it enough times and hammer out all the details. I'm going to continue to try to make changes and try to make improvements and get better each and every time. So I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching wherever and however you did, and I'll talk to you again soon.